So right now, as of the second half of 2020, Sony's ANC headphone lineup has been mostly refreshed. The most recent headphones to be released here are the Sony WH-XM4s. But the Sony WH-CH710Ns and the Sony WH-H910Ns, aka the H.ear On 3s, were released just a few months ago. But then, we also have the Sony XB900Ns, which are a little over a year old now. But these are still my favorite pair of mid-tier ANC headphones to recommend. So today we're going to be breaking down Sony's current ANC headphone lineup, and we're going to see which one's right for you. Now, first off, let's talk about price. The WH-710Ns have a retail price of $200, but they constantly go on sale for less than $150. Whereas the XB900Ns have a retail price of $250, but they constantly like to go on sale for $178. Then there are the H.ear On 3s, which have a retail price of $300, but these are a little harder to get. Right now, the easiest way to get them is from Costco, and you can find them on sale for $200. But sometimes they can be found on sale for $150, which is just insane. But the caveat here is that you do have to be a Costco member. And finally, there are the Sony WH-XM4s, which have a retail price of $350. So if you want to pick any of these headphones up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to learn more about any of these headphones, please watch the full reviews, because we're only going to be going over their main differences. Now, let's talk about the included carrying cases here. Unfortunately, the 710Ns don't come included with any kind of a case. Even though these are a pair of entry-level headphones, it's really unfortunate because there are plenty of other entry-level headphones out there that do come included with some kind of a case. Then there are the XB900N and H.ear On 3s, which both come included with carrying pouches. And again, I do find this to be a little unfortunate because there are plenty of other mid-tier ANC headphones out there that come included with a hard shell carrying case. So if you do plan on commuting or traveling a lot with your headphones, I do advise that you invest in a hard shell case. However, I do want to point out that only the XB900Ns can both be fully collapsed or laid down flat, whereas the H.ear On 3s can't be laid down flat, limiting the amount of aftermarket cases you could use with these headphones. But finally, there are the WH-XM4s, which come included with a great hard shell carrying case that's really stiff. So they're going to keep your headphones perfectly safe when they're in your backpack or carry-on. And they also have a little storage compartment for your cables. But now let's talk about the headphones themselves. All of these headphones are mostly made out of plastic, but they do feel very different in your hands. Now, the WH-710Ns do feel very cheap when compared to all of these other headphones. They're sturdy and they get the job done, but they feel more like a toy. Whereas even though the XB900N have a very similar plastic texture body to the 710Ns, they feel more premium and better put together. But if we were to switch over to the H.ear On 3s, these headphones feel more premium, specifically because the majority of their body has a soft touch feel to them. Whereas the body of the WH-XM4s has a mostly slate finish to it, and the soft touch feel is reserved to the caps on their ear cups. But one very crucial detail that I have omitted so far is the leatherette on these headphones. Now, first off, I want to make it perfectly clear that I do not like the leatherette on the WH-710Ns because it feels very coarse. Whereas the leatherette on the WH-XM4s feels good enough to get the job done, but it does feel very plasticky, and it does pale in comparison to the leatherette on other premium ANC headphones out there. Now personally, I do feel the leatherette on the XB900Ns feels a little better than the WH-XM4s, because it's a little more supple. But the leatherette on the H.ear On 3s is the best feeling one here, because it's even more supple. So overall build quality wise, the 710Ns do feel a little lackluster for entry-level headphones. The XB900N feel good enough for a pair of mid-tier ANC headphones. The WH-XM4s get the job done for premium ANC headphones, but I do think the H.ear On 3s take the cake here. Now, when it comes to fit, all of these headphones are Big Head approved because none of them have a lot of clamping force. And all of these headphones are very lightweight, so they're easy to forget that you have them on, and they aren't super noticeable when you're walking around with them on. But when it comes to their ear pads, things are very different. Even though the ear pads on the 710Ns are very wide, since they're very shallow, they still end up pressing down on my cartilage. Whereas all of these other headphones have much roomier ear pads and they fit me just fine. But there are still some differences to point out. When it comes to roominess, both the 1000XM4s and XB900N are pretty much the same, and they both should be able to fit most people just fine. But if you have larger ears or ears that stick out a lot, then you are better off going with the H.ear On 3s, because their ear pads are significantly more spacious. The ear pads on the H.ear On 3s are actually very similar to the ones found on the Bose NC700s. But also, since the padding on the H.ear On 3s and WH-H710Ns do have a little less surface area coming in contact with your skin, they do heat up much slower. Whereas the XB900N do heat up a little faster because they have more surface area. Now, none of these headphones have an overheating problem, but both the H.ear On 3s and WH-H710Ns do stay cooler for longer than both the XB900N or 1000XM4. But now let's talk about tech specs. Just as you'd expect, all of these headphones charge via a USB-C port, as they should. And when it comes to battery life, this is actually an area where Sony has always done very well. Now, both the XB900Ns and 1000XM4s have an advertised battery life of 30 hours with their ANC turned on, whereas both the WH-H710Ns and the H.ear On 3s have an advertised battery life of 35 hours with their ANC turned on. But you can always stretch out the battery life on all of these headphones if you use them with their ANC turned off. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, this is where we start to see some major differences. Only the 1000XM4s can be connected to two devices at the same time, so you can easily hot swap from your phone to your computer. And this can be a big deal for power users. Whereas with all of these other headphones, they can only be connected to one device at a time. Now, ultimately, it's not a huge deal if your headphones can do this, but it is very nice to be able to. But more importantly, when it comes to watching movies or videos on your phone, all of these headphones have zero latency across the board, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. And this is important to point out because the WH-H710Ns used to have a slight latency to them whenever you would watch YouTube videos with them, but not anymore. But now let's talk about audio codecs, because Sony is currently phasing out aptX support on their newer headphones. Both the 1000XM4s and H.ear On 3s have support for SBC, AAC, and LDAC, which is Sony's own high-res audio codec, whereas the WH-H710Ns only have support for SBC and AAC. But then there are the XB900Ns, which are the oldest headphones here, and they have support for SBC, AAC, and LDAC just like the 1000XM4s. But they also have support for aptX and aptX HD. But like I said, Sony is currently phasing out aptX support in favor of LDAC. Now, if you're an iPhone user, LDAC or aptX support doesn't matter because iPhones top out at AAC. But one last thing I do want to point out here is that thankfully, all of these headphones still have an easy-to-reach 3.5mm audio jack, so you can use a wired connection with any of these headphones. Now, I know this might sound obvious, but I do like to point this out because some companies are starting to remove the audio jack on some of their headphones, either as a cost-saving measure or because they're really trying to push forward this all-wireless future, even though we're not entirely ready, like Apple did with their Beats Solo Pro. But don't worry, if you really gotta use a wired connection with your Beats Solo Pro, Apple has a $35 audio to lightning port cable that they're ready to sell you. But I also want to quickly point out that you can't use the USB-C port on any of these headphones as a wired connection. If you want to use a wired connection with any of these headphones, you gotta use their audio jack. But now let's talk about listening to music with these headphones, because all of these headphones sound very different from one another. First off, let's start off with the WH-H710Ns. Personally, I don't really like listening to music with these headphones because these headphones have a bass-heavy EQ to them, and they do sound very shallow. If you want to actually hear the mids and highs on these headphones, then you gotta turn them all the way up. And since these headphones sound very shallow, they do make it very hard to hear what people are saying when you're watching movies with these headphones. And unfortunately, unlike all of these other headphones, the 710Ns don't have an adjustable EQ, so you can't change how they sound directly. They don't even connect to Sony's Headphones app, period, which is something their predecessors did do. But now let's talk about listening to music with these other headphones. Now, all of these headphones do connect to Sony's app, so you can make them sound however you want. If you like a neutral EQ, you can do that, or if you like a bass-heavy EQ, you can also do that. Now, these three headphones sound the same when it comes to clarity, instrument separation, and soundstage. But these headphones really differ when it comes to their bass and how much they will physically rattle your head. The H.ear On 3s are using 25mm drivers, and these headphones will rattle your head the least here. Having the extra bass slider on these headphones set to 10 is like having the extra bass slider on the 1000 XM4s set to 4. So for some people, the bass on the H.ear On 3s might feel a little lacking. Whereas these other two headphones are using 40mm drivers, and the bass on the 1000 XM4s should be able to satiate most people. But if you're someone that really likes bass, then you are going to want to go with the XB900N. The XB900Ns are going to physically rattle your head way more than your average pair of headphones. And having the bass on the 1000 XM4s set to 10 is like having the bass on the XB900N set to 5. So, with the XB900N, it's like having a subwoofer strapped to your head. Now, having all of this bass is a lot of fun when listening to music, and it also adds an extra level of immersiveness when watching movies with these headphones. But it can get old after a while. So, if you don't want to use the extra bass feature, you don't have to, but it's there if you want it. So, when it comes to sound, I feel you can't go wrong with either the 1000 XM4s or XB900N. But personally, I really like having that extra bass feature on the XB900N if you want it. Now, when it comes to controlling your music, the 710Ns are rocking physical buttons, and as far as buttons go, these are pretty good. They're easy to find, they're easy to tell apart, and they have a good click to them. Whereas all of these other headphones are using touchpads. Now, in general, Sony's touchpads are also very easy to use, and they all have a high level of accuracy. But on occasion, you will get some missed inputs. But in general, these touchpads are not problematic. But something the 1000 XM4s do have that none of these other headphones do are wear sensors. So when you take these headphones off, they'll automatically pause the music, and then when you put them back on, they'll start playing your music again. Now personally, I don't care for wear sensors, so I just turned them off, but I thought I'd still address them. Now, when it comes to the active noise cancellation on these headphones, for the most part, as you go up in price, the ANC on these headphones gets better. But nonetheless, the ANC on all of these headphones have very little to no cabin pressure, and they don't change how your music sounds. But so that you can see for yourself, we're going to jump into an ANC test. So, like you may have just seen, The entry-level WH-CH710Ns actually managed to block out a little more noise than the XB900N. But also, keep in mind, the 710Ns are newer than the XB900N. But just as you'd expect, the ANC on the H.ear On 3s is a little better, and the 1000XM4s block out the most amount of noise here. So if active noise cancellation is your main priority, then you are better off going with the 1000XM4s. But now let's talk about the ambient modes on these headphones. Now I do want to point out that yes, the 710Ns do have an ambient mode, which is currently rare for entry-level headphones. But unlike these other headphones, you can't actually adjust how much noise these headphones let in. Whereas with these other headphones, you can adjust how much noise they let in. But in general, all of these headphones have great ambient modes because they all sound very natural, and none of them have any hissing in the background, which is super important for when you're watching movies with these headphones. But overall, the 1000XM4s do have the best ambient mode for two key reasons. They do the best job here of blocking out wind noise when walking outdoors, and they're also the only headphones here that have an active ambient mode, meaning that they'll actively block out sudden spikes in loud noises like this. And also, slight headphone warning. So, like you may have just seen, when the 1000XM4s detected that loud noise, they turned off their ambient mode, and when that loud noise stopped, they turned their ambient mode back on. Now personally, I love when headphones have an active ambient mode because it really does help prevent jump scares. And this active ambient mode also really does come in handy when you're working at home with your headphones on, and your dog starts barking when the UPS man comes around. Whereas with these other headphones, they'll just let in everything. Now, one new feature on the 1000XM4s that Sony is really trying to push on these headphones, and you can't find it on any of Sony's other headphones, is Speak to Chat, which works a little like this. Hello there! So this is Speak to Chat. Basically, whenever I start talking, the headphones will automatically lower the volume of your music and pump in all of the ambient sound around you so that you can talk to someone without even to have to touch your headphones. And then, once you're done talking, you can either wait for the headphones themselves to start playing music again, or you can double tap on the touchpad.
We all know that it's a lie.
But ultimately for me, Speak to Chat is just a gimmick that I'm just not going to use. Now, Speak to Chat doesn't get activated when other people are talking around you. It does a great job of rejecting that. But if you do decide to use Speak to Chat, then you have to be completely silent. Speak to Chat on these headphones will get activated if you're singing along to your music, if you're thinking out loud, even very quietly. And Speak to Chat is also going to get activated on these headphones when you start laughing, which can definitely be a big problem if you're a regular viewer of JK News. So the days that I did try to use Speak to Chat on these headphones, they would just pause my music every time I would just mutter a few words, becoming more of a nuisance rather than helpful. So if you are going to have a quick conversation with someone, personally, I do prefer to use quick attention, which is a feature that's found on the 1000XM4s, H.ear On 3s, and XB900Ns, where if you fully cover their touchpad, they're going to lower the volume of your music and let in all of the ambient sound around you, like this. And then when you let go, they'll go back to normal again. But the problem with quick attention on all of these headphones is that you gotta constantly keep their touchpad covered. And if you're gonna try to have a conversation with someone like this both looks and feels very awkward. Sony has to change it so that when you have the touchpad on their headphones fully covered for a full second, they'll get locked into quick attention mode so that you can let go and have your conversation with your hands free like a normal human. And then when you're done, you can just double tap on your touchpad and the headphones will go back to normal again. Because plenty of other headphones out there have a similar feature, but you can actually have your hands free once the feature is activated. So I just feel Speak to Chat is an over-engineered solution to a very simple problem that Sony can easily fix with a small change to quick attention, which they can add to all of their headphones through a software update.
But finally, here's a microphone test. And in general, this isn't Sony's strong suit.
My voice might sound a little muffled,
Or my voice doesn't sound super clear.
however, even though my voice doesn't sound super clear with the Sony 1000XM4s, these headphones are doing an impressive job of blocking out that AC unit. Because if we were to switch over to on the lapel microphone, you're going to clearly hear that AC unit. But if we were to switch back over to the Sony 1000XM4s, you can barely even hear it.
But overall, Sony's headphones don't have the best microphone for phone calls.
They might get the job done,
But there are plenty of other headphones out there.
there with better microphones. But with all that being said, here's my breakdown of Sony's current ANC headphone lineup. Personally, I would not pay full price for the WH-H710Ns because of their lackluster build quality, and I'm not a fan of their bass-heavy EQ. And I really hate that these headphones don't connect to Sony's Headphones app, even though their predecessors did. But if you can get them on sale, then I would pick them up because of their impressive ANC performance for entry-level headphones. And they also have an ambient mode, which is also rare for entry-level headphones. Now, when it comes to the XB900Ns, these are still my favorite mid-tier ANC headphones to recommend. They have decent build quality and they should fit most people just fine. They sound great, and they also have that extra bass feature if you want it. And the extra bass feature on the XB900N is the main reason why I prefer them to the H.ear On 3s. But if you can get the H.ear On 3s on sale at Costco, or if you need the extra roomy ear cups, then the H.ear On 3s are a solid pick as well. The only thing is that if you do plan on commuting a lot with either of these headphones, you are going to have to invest in your own hard shell carrying case. But finally, there are the 1000XM4s, which do have the improved active noise cancellation and the improved ambient mode here. But they also have a few extra features like wear sensors and speak to chat, which are just two features I just don't use. So personally, I think most people are going to be just fine with the XB900N. But if you are a constant commuter or traveler, then the 1000XM4s are the way to go. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick another products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.